Hi everyone, welcome to my talk, which is From Science to the Woo in the company of three horses, and is basically the tale of how I've got right here, and how it is my love of horses that has brought me here. So to start off, I suppose you should know that I came from a very unhorsey background. Neither of my parents knew one end of a horse from the other, and we lived in Wembley, which is a suburb of London, in a semi-detached house. So there was no fields, no nothing. Well, there were fields and stuff around us, but no opportunity to keep a horse. And it was right from an early age, there I am, age about 2, that apparently I started asking for horses. You know, can I have a pony? It was my plea every birthday and every Christmas, and of course the answer was no, we've got nowhere to keep it. My parents were very lucky I didn't understand the concept of a livery yard or a boarding yard, because then it might have been a different story. But anyway, I kept asking and asking, and in the end, at the age of 10, I was given a set of 6 lessons in the local riding stable, Suzanne's, in Stanmore. And bless my dad, he worked 5.5 days a week, and that was, you know, till lunchtime Saturday, and then Saturday afternoons were taken up with taking me to my riding lesson, my half-hour riding lesson. And I do remember him one day driving back, having spent his afternoon yet again taking me riding, saying, "Tinker darling," he said, "can you not take up running?" To which the answer was no. So anyway, yes, my first sit on a horse was on a little bay cobby type called Willem. I can still remember him. He had like a hogged mane, white blaze, black points, white socks, and we were in a very small indoor school, but I was in 7th heaven. So that was my start of my riding career, age 10. After that, I used to spend every summer down in Pembroke with my grandmother, and that's when I used to work on a trekking stables called Orchard, and here I am turning the ponies out. Such fun was had there. So yeah, that was my summers. So I was either on the trekking stables or I was riding Cromwell, and Cromwell belonged to a wonderful farmer, John James. He had various hunters, and I used to just disappear on that horse. I remember one time I rode, I'm sure it was when I rode over to a beach called Freshwater West, which was quite away from where John's farm was. And I got back, I think probably I left about 10 o'clock, and I was coming back about 4 o'clock. And he was literally coming out in the Land Rover to look for me. He didn't know where the hell I was. But every holiday, especially winter, I'd go and I'd ride Cromwell out, and you can see there I'm on Broadhaven South Beach with Church Rock in the background, and my dad was an absolute trooper. He came down with a force 8 gale blowing and took the photos of me and Crom riding. I sort of rode over there, and he had to walk down the cliff because you couldn't drive to the beach. But anyway, yeah, happy memories. Cromwell and I spent many a happy day together. And then when I was in university, I met a horse called Rosewood. I looked after her for a local lady, Liz, and that's where my love affair with Cleveland Bays began. So Rosie and I used to ride out everywhere. So I used to beg, borrow, or steal horses whenever I could, but it wasn't until 1992 that Midnight Maiden came into my life, and she was a cross thoroughbred Cleveland Bay. And here you see her, this is my first ride, and you see Angie to the left there on Grantley, her wonderful Irish cob. And it's thanks to Angie that I have horses, because being married to a Welsh sheep farmer who they tend not to like horses on the land, especially in the winter, it gave me a chance that I could stable Min up with Ange. Yeah, we got we got into a lot of fun together. So yeah, this was the first day that I rode her, and she'd been out all day. Obviously she'd been to the I bought her in Hereford March. She was lot 33, and we came home and we just went for a hack. So the next day, this is again the first day, and that's her all looking pretty. The next day, so the first day that I actually had her at home the whole day, I had her in during the day, and then in the afternoon I went to ride out, and Ange came down with Grantley, and she was on her way down, and I jumped on midnight, and she wasn't very keen to stand still. And it is so the case of, if I knew then what I know now, things might have been different. But basically we rode out of the front of the house, and there's a little hill on the road, and she bucked me off. I landed on my left arm, and it did 180 degrees without me asking it. So basically I'd broken the humerus. Why they call it a humerus, I don't know. But that entailed a trip to hospital, getting it set. So they just put it in a collar and cuff. And because I'd had so much painkiller to get it sorted, they said, you've got to stay in overnight. So that was that. I hadn't got anything with me. Now, the next thing that happened, I'm going to let you know, because it just shows when my mouth engages without my brain. And they'd said, oh, somebody would come up and check on you later in the evening and make sure you're all right and see if you need any more painkiller. Anyway, I don't know, about 8:30 at night, this very nice young doctor came in, and he said, did you want any painkiller? I said, no, that's fine. And what followed was his fault, because he looked at the side of my bed and he saw my long black riding boots, and he went, are they yours? Without thinking, I said yes, and the whips are at home. You've never seen a doctor leave a ward so fast in all your life. And needless to say, I didn't get checked on again, which was fine. I was okay. But anyway, yeah, that was one of my little faux pas. Anyway, Min and I started our relationship. She went off to somebody else to be schooled for a couple of weeks, and about 6 weeks later I could get back on her. And I mean, we had great fun. But here you see him Western tack, because there were so many times when I first rode her out that I thought, why did I not buy a ready-made 7-year-old? Because her favourite word was no, not to go forward. I developed techniques of, if she said, no, I'm not going past that, or I'm not going any further, I'd turn her towards home, and then I'd reverse her past whatever she was spooking at, and she'd sort of say, oh, okay, we've got past that. And we sort of muddled our way through. I then had this wonderful idea that if I put Western tack on her, somehow I've got a Western trained horse. It doesn't work, folks, let you know that. But she was the what can I say, the catalyst to all of my work now, because I kept having to find a different way. And what I found first was Pirelli. Loved that. It gave me a different perspective. And I was working through, I'd done level 1, I was working into level 2. And a friend of mine, Val, she had recently moved up from Pembrokeshire, and she'd sold her place to another horseman. And that horseman had been over in America, and he'd met a trainer over there, and he'd invited that trainer to his place in Pembrokeshire. And Val said to me, do you want to come down? And this was, didn't have any transport at all, I didn't have a trailer or anything, and this would be the first time that I managed to take Min away anywhere. So I said yes, please. So this is where my big change transpired. So the guy whose place we went to stay at was Steve Young, and some of you may know Steve. So this was, the pictures here are when I started organising clinics for him after I met him down at his place when he held the first clinic, and the clinic was with a clinician called Len Judd. This is again was a later picture, Len on midnight. But that first clinic that I went to in Pembrokeshire, I describe it as a spiritual experience, because all Len talked about was energy. How the horses could sense it, what he could feel, what he could see, how the horses were reacting to everything. And it blew my brain. I went in the scientist on the Friday, and I came out on the Sunday evening. I didn't know who the hell I was. Literally everything that I believed in was thrown up in the air. I'd been a scientist in that if you could measure it, replicate it, and explain it, I'd believe it. Otherwise 2 words and the second one's off. I don't want to know. And I like science because it was yes or no, right or wrong. But now he'd introduced this concept of energy where all of my beliefs and my understanding was different. So I came back from that clinic, and I can remember going shopping in Safeway, I think it was then, and they have this music, or muzak as they call it, piped over the airways there, and I can remember crying over the potatoes because because of this music. I was absolutely lost. I mean, I was completely didn't know what the hell was going on. So it began a period of intense exploration, and one of the things that I explored was lots of books. And when I was in our local bookshop, Ottokar's, as was in Aberystwyth, this book was on the shelf under the mind, body and soul, or whatever they called it. I'd never met Reiki. I didn't know what the hell it was, but that was the book I picked up, and it fell open, I kid you not, on this page. And this is what it says. It says some people go through a shift in their awareness immediately, describing the sensation as almost like being reborn, so that they experience everything around them more intensely. Colours are brighter, their sense of smell is enhanced, and sounds are sharper. Others feel a buzzing or heightened sensitivity in the crown chakra for a short while, or describe a sense of floating or lightheadedness. And that was what they described when you have an attunement to Reiki. And that was very similar to what I just experienced at the clinic. And I promise you that was the only reason I started studying Reiki, was I wanted more of that. Self-interest, 100%. But that was my first step into energy work, energy healing. So Min was my absolute catalyst to this. If she'd been an easy, ready-made horse, who knows where I went. And I mean, you can always say about these sliding door moments where you take one path or another. It's not to say I wouldn't have got to the energy work in some other way, but I got there in a very intense one weekend way, and it was because of this horse, Midnight Maiden. Now the next slide, I did contemplate whether to put it in or not, and I thought, no, I'm going to, because I'm going to honour this horse. And I swear to goodness, this horse sorted this out. So Min had to be put down due to colic on the 1st of January 2015. So first of all, she chose a date that Mother would not forget, because Mother's shit at dates. And secondly, everybody was there. So Angie and Tim were there, but I was there obviously. But more than that, Catriona MacDonald, who some of you may know, Cat is a close friend, and she was treating our horses regularly. And she'd said to us, oh, I'll come up sometime, Christmas, New Year. We didn't know when. She turned up as Min, we were waiting for the vet to come back to put Min down. The vet had been and given her Buscopan and everything, and he said, oh, I'll leave it a couple of hours. And I just phoned him and said, no, come back. And so she came back, and she was working with Min. And she said, yeah, she's absolutely ready to go. In fact, she's going. You know, there was no worry that she was trying to fight to stay. It was like everything was in perfect alignment, if you like. And then Kat said, oh, and Min, she says she's bringing the next horse forward. That did not go down well with me. And I'm afraid the two words I said were, well, she can fuck off, because you haven't even gone yet, horse. Do not even think, I'm not thinking about another one. So she got put down. She's buried on the best place on the farm, up high, which I'm planning to try and get buried next to her, but that's another story. So anyway, we were, livestock farming. And so January to April, they were the most manic. That was the most manic time, because we were calving, we were lambing 400 ewes, calving 20 cows. It was, shit weather, there's no grass, I've got no time to do anything. So in my mind I said, right, I'm not going to look for another horse till April, because there's no way that I could do anything with it if I did find one. You know how they say the best laid plans. About 10 days after Min had died, I suddenly thought, oh, there's one person I've got to just get in touch with. And he was a guy called Clive. He lived about 20 miles south. And he sold farmware, boots and stuff like that. And we used to go down there. My husband used to go down to go and buy boots. I always used to go with him, because Clive also bred Welsh cobs and Spanish horses, Andalusians as they were then, pre as they are now. And so I thought, I'm just going to phone Clive, because if I get to April and I find that he had the perfect horse now, I will be so pig sick. So anyway, I phoned Clive and I told him what had happened, and he said, oh, sorry, Kath. And he said, yeah, he said, I've got 2 geldings here, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, 16 too. And I thought, come along, Clive, have a heart, you know. I barely get my knee up 2 foot, let alone trying to get on a 16-2. And then almost as an afterthought, he said, oh, well, yeah, Jan has just been working with a little 15-hand bay mare. 3-year-old, sweet as it can be. And so my little ears pricked up. So suffice to say, 18th of January, I was down on his farm. And bless Clive, he has like a winter field where all the horses overwinter. You know, it's a sacrifice. It's a huge field, and he feeds them in there. And he thought, because Ange, my compatriot, came with me, that we were coming down, he put them into the spring field, and of course they just rolled and rolled. So he was hoping that they'd be nice and clean, but as you can see, wasn't quite the case. So this was our first meeting with Llangybi Castiza, as she's known, and that's me seeing her for the first time. And yeah, I mean, she was just there. You can see her on the left there with Ange. So it was like, yeah, definitely, this is my horse. I love a bay horse, as you can see from the first one, and now the second one. And so 25th of January, I went down. I went for a ride on her. She was absolutely amazing, considering she hadn't done anything since the autumn. And I jumped on her on the road, and a post van came flying around the corner, and she just went, yeah, it's a post van. And I thought, oh, she's my horse. So Clive, I bought her there and then, but Clive very kindly kept her till April. And then this is her first day, 15th of April 2015, just before her 4th birthday, that she came to me. And so 2015 was a massive year. I lost Min, I got Teasel, and I also found Warwick. So here, various things that I've been doing with Tease, but all of it stemmed from Warwick's work. And what happened was that while Teasel was still with Clive, you know, before I had her home in April, I had a friend who was really high up in Pirelli, and she came to see Tease and started doing a bit of work with her when she was still at Clive's. And I went home thinking, oh God, yeah, I've really got to get back into Pirelli, doing something. And it was somewhere in that search of Pirelli that I found Warwick. I can't tell you where, I don't know what it was, but it was like, oh my goodness. And of course, so that was February. I looked at Warwick's website, and he was in Cardiff, really close to me. Well, you know, a couple of hours away, so really close. In about 3 weeks' time. And it was like, okay, meant to be. So I went down, and Branman Sloper had organised the clinic, and I said, look, I've got to speak to Warwick, because I didn't have transport. What I used to do was organise clinics near me in Aberystwyth, just to get the clinicians there so I could go. And so immediately that I knew Warwick was coming to Wales, I mentioned to him that first meeting, you know, any chance you can get to Aberystwyth? And I always remember his reply. He said, you better ask my wife. I didn't know Robin then, and I thought, oh, that's a good reply. But that was the first time that I met Warwick. And so I took on board, you know, I was doing all of his work, the way of working with him. And, you know, this is Tease out on the beach. She was just a joy. She took everything on board. And I took her to Warwick's clinic in Cardiff in 2016. And I organised for him to come to Aberystwyth in 2017. However, going back to 2015, on I think it's the 15th of August 2015, I just felt the urge to go and sit with Tease in her stable. Now, I'd been given this book 2 years, oh, there we go. I'd been given this book 2 years before, 2013, and I didn't know what it was for. I knew there was going to be something special, didn't know what it was. But when Teasel came into my life, I went, oh, this is Teasel's book. So I started writing down all my experiences, everything that, when I was training her, doing Warwick's work, how she was. And it was actually, the 18th of August 2015. I felt compelled to go and sit there with her and write. And so it was like automatic writing, 6 pages. And I look back at that work now, those words now, and I realise she predicted my work. You can maybe see it says, journey together this plane to the next, understand the connection between all things, energy flows, there is no barrier, freedom from constraint of the physical, accessing wisdom not of this world, reading beyond the material. I am in the shape of the horse, but we are spirit connection. I've come here to help lead and heal. Follow me closely, watch me closely. I will teach you access to these things. Our connection is high above physicality. This is the path you are meant to tread. Our connection will lead to heights of understanding not yet reached, atom to atom, energy to energy. There is no blockage, I'm looking at that, and there is no blockage to attaining bliss. Just be, follow, feel and understand. All is attainable once you free yourself of the constraints you impose on yourself. So there's 6 pages of that. I didn't know what I was writing. And that was the start of this spiritual connection, this information. I still don't know whether she brings that to me or whether she puts me in a place where I find it. But as you can see, that book is full, and I have another book that's full. And Evie, my next horse, which I will introduce to you, who I will introduce to you in a minute, she also is part of this. So there we are. This is what 2015, this started happening, that all of this information was coming through. And when I would sit and write, and obviously here we are in the field, she would stand with me and she would lick and chew at certain times. When I was writing something quite deep, she would lick and chew, and it was almost like she was saying to me, yeah, you got that, that's right, yeah, good. So along with this deep connection with this horse, my work, I was a reconnective healing practitioner, certified. I'd done every course known to man within that modality. And I was informed that everybody had to do a recertification process. So I went up to London in September 2015 to do that. So one part of me was slightly, I didn't think we had to do anything else. One part of me was like, no, I understand. You want to make sure we're doing it right. All I shall say is that part of it didn't sit well with me at all. And it was the best thing that could happen. I did the whole weekend, but I came away going, no, I don't need this anymore. I don't need a title behind my name. I don't need the security of being a practitioner of something. I am just me. So it was in, I think, October 2015, I formed my own way of working, which I call Point of Balance. And I stepped into that knowing I was enough. I was the sum, and I am the sum of all my experiences, mother, wife, farmer, IT, horse person, studying, the Reiki, quantum touch healing, reconnective healing. All of those things are part of me, but I was enough. I didn't need to be aligned with something to have a protection mechanism. So that was a massive, massive change. And that's the work I stepped into. And then in 2017, Warwick came to Aberystwyth. But before then, there was a clinic down in Bodiam, down in Sussex, West Sussex, I think it is. And I didn't think I could go to it. I knew I wasn't taking the horse, but I wanted it. Everyone was saying, oh, come down, because I'd made all these friends within Warwick's world. And I didn't think I was going to make it. However, literally last minute, it opened up to go down there. And so that's when I drove. I remember putting the postcode into the sat nav, And I didn't know where it was. Literally, I hadn't even looked at the map, and it was like 5.5, 6 hours. I thought, geez, where am I going? And there were various diversions. When I got down near there, they'd shut the motorway, so I literally had to do it by feel. Like, right, I think we need to go this way, because the sat nav kept trying to take me back on the motorway. Anyway, I got there, and it was at that Bodiam clinic, for some reason, I sat with Warwick and various others at a table. I think it was on the Saturday night. And I just told him all my weird shit. I mean, all of the weird stuff. And that's the classic time when he said, who do you tell this weird shit to? And I said to him, you're probably only the fourth or fifth person that knows the whole story. And so it was from then that Warwick and I started to, because Warwick was on this massive, fast, accelerated spiritual journey. And so we were constantly exchanging notes about what's happened. So then that continued on. My work was, as Point of Balance, was expanding, and I was growing within that. And then in 2021, Teasel had been not 100% from 2019. She first of all had laminitis, then she was diagnosed as IR and EMS, and basically I sent her away to a track place for 6 months at the end of 2020. Best thing I ever did. Larry, if you're watching this, thank you so much. Horsehaven, because I always say she saved my horse. She was so brilliant Larry was so brilliant at looking after her attention to detail. And so in September 2021, Tees was ready to come home, and I'd got a track worked out. But I couldn't put her back with who she'd normally grazed with, because it was a grass, Foxy Angie's horses. And so I thought, I've got to buy another horse. So that's what I did. I went down to Llanybeth the Mart, which is a very old established horse sale in a mart about 40 miles south of here. And Ange and I, off we trundled. And that's when Llanonin Yvette came into my life, aka Evie. And so, yeah, she has been an absolute joy. She's completely different from Teasel, and I have to admit she didn't get the concentrated training that Tees did. But she has led me on a wonderful journey. You know, she's been part of this journey as well. And the two of them, they have their moments, but they do get on very well. And they've become a big part of my work. I mean, they both stand there now when I'm writing. You know, I sit there and the pair of them are sharing stuff with me, and sometimes I don't know who it's from, sometimes it becomes clear. They just go in the zone, and again they both come and stand and they lick and chew, and I swear to God they're going, yeah, right, you got that. So they're very much, there's the new book part of that, but they're also part of my work. So I hold what I call residential retreats here at home. Only 4 people can come on at any one time maximum, and part of it now is that they go and sit with the horses. Sometimes it's to write down what impressions they get, so sort of almost communicate. They're doing what I do with them, that they'll sit and see what impressions come to them. But also I've started doing my healing stuff with them, so people are sitting with the horses, and then I work with the energy. But we've gone even further now, and we also have my wonderful friend Larry comes, and she does a sound bath with us as well. So we have the 3 elements: the people are there, the sound bath, the energy, the horses, and it is magical. It really is magical. So these horses are so integral to who I am and what I do, and they give me this information, they give me this support. So it's because of them and because of my connection with Warwick that I got onto Warwick's podcast in 2021. He invited me on there, and we actually recorded it twice, because the first time I didn't go what I call full woo-woo shit. I kept back a lot of the really weird stuff. And when we finished, I thought, oh, I've missed a trick. I should have spoken about everything. And so I rang him up and he said, yeah, no worries, do it again. So I did go full woo-woo. And when that went out, the response was utterly amazing. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect what happened, and that was the fact that people, along with being interested in my work, so many people got in touch and said, thank you for being authentic, thank you for being you, telling your truth, because now I can tell mine. And that was a massive thing. I just didn't expect that. So yeah, thankfully to Warwick, I've been on, his podcast 2 or 3 times, and of course I've also been at the various summits. The inaugural one in San Antonio, and then down in Melbourne, which was a fabulous excuse to visit Australia, something I'd always wanted to do, and then in Birmingham with all these amazing speakers and all of the amazing audience there, the people I've got to meet who've become real friends. So I'm so grateful, but it's absolutely because of the horses that I am here doing this work, and I have had this experience. And why I loved horses, from a completely non-horsey background, who knows? But for me, that's been the constant through my life that has led me to this point. There's a little addendum that I've added to this video. I realised as I was editing it that I hadn't said what I usually say about my 3 horses, in that they've all come to me for different reasons to teach me different things. The first was Midnight came to show me a different way, to help me find a different way, and that was finding the energy. Then Teasel came along, and she was like, hey mum, okay, now I'm going to show you what is possible. And then when Evie came along, her message to me, I felt, was, I just going to check with you that you can walk the talk. And by that, she's got some mannerisms, let's say, when we go out riding or leading or whatever, that are a little more interesting, let's put it like that. And I felt, oh, okay, she's here to just make sure I keep to the path, if you like. But it was more on the physical manner that I was thinking, connection with the horse, yes, and that sort of thing. However, 2 days ago, I had a wonderful session with my amazing applied kinesiologist friend, Larry Thomas. We were going deep into various subjects, and we were talking about the horses, and we were talking about my work, the energy side of stuff, and how, I get imposter syndrome the same as other people, and it's about believing in me and stepping forward. And out of Larry's mouth came the words, of course then I feel that Evie is all about making sure you can walk the talk. She used those words, and I'd never spoken to her about, the riding side as such. And so it was, oh, okay, that is what I've also got, is that Evie is there to be my helper in making sure I really keep focused and forward and stepping into my work. So just wanted to add that little bit on at the end. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's just giving you a brief overview as to how I've got here and how these horses have been so important to me. If you'd like any more information about my work, please just contact me through my website, www.kathyprice.co.uk. Thank you so much.